Welcome to Ask the Funeral Director with Mike Voyajakis. Brought to you by Voyage Funeral Home and Crematorium. Now, here's your Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Ask the Funeral Director with Mike Voyajakis. I'm your host, Brad Wilder. We've got a great show set to go tonight. The word great doesn't necessarily fit in with this, but it's going to be an hour of, well, I'm going to say a tough conversation, a very tough conversation. There's a line that's going to be drawn tonight, and that line that we draw is going to, in some people's opinions, going to be crossed. In other people's opinions, it's not going to be crossed. The line in the sand is about MAID. Mike has been advertising it now and talking about it for the last couple of weeks, and we need to get to this. We need to talk about this. It has to do with a new bill, C7. It has to do with our children. And it's very concerning, and we're going to get to it right here on Ask the Funeral Director, coming up after this.
I'm Michael Voyajakis of Voyage Funeral Home, a licensed funeral director and embalmer in the province of Manitoba. Let's talk about simple cremation, and we'll talk about the price differences. At Voyage Funeral Home, simple cremation, $1,680, no hidden costs, no surprises. At Voyage Funeral Home, you get one thing for sure: continuity of care, treating your loved one as we would our own. What's included in simple cremation? Taking your loved one into our care from the place of death. Once we have your loved one into our care, we transfer to and from the crematorium. Voyage Funeral Home and Crematorium owns and operates a state-of-the-art cremation facility. We include all your administration fees, provide you with your Canada pension forms, allowing you to apply for up to $2,500 from the government, provide you with your surviving spouse benefit forms, allowing you to apply for up to 60% of your loved one's pension. We help you put an obituary together in the Winnipeg Free Press, the Winnipeg Sun, are absolutely free on our website. Continuity of care, family owned and operated. Voyage Funeral Home and Crematorium. When you're thinking simple cremation, think Voyage, $1,680.
Welcome back to Ask the Funeral Director on this Wednesday evening. We've got a lot to get to tonight. Bill C7 has got us all concerned. There's a lot that we're going to discuss tonight, and I want to acknowledge the sensitivity of the topic itself. Put the kids away, put them to bed, get them out of the room, put your headphones on, do something else tonight to listen to the show. We do not want kids to listen. I've even told my 21-year-old and my 18-year-old to not pay attention to the show tonight. For the reasons that I just don't want them knowing, and I'm sure you're not going to want your kids knowing either. It's really important that we know, though, and I think that's where we take heart into what we're about to discuss tonight, and this is going to be a tough topic, tough discussion with some tough outcomes for some. This doesn't affect just myself or Mike or the funeral business. This is about Canadians. This is about Canadians all across this great country from coast to coast. So without further ado, let me bring in Mike Voyajakis. Mike, great to have you on the program tonight. Thank you very much for being here. I'm already getting emotional about this because I cannot believe what Wab Kinew is doing to this province or what Justin Trudeau and Mark Carney have done to this country.
It's a touchy subject all around. And, some people believe in MAID and other people are 100% against it. And we'll talk about that tonight. We'll break it up when MAID started, what it was all about, and where it's gotten to now. And it's scary. It's scary what's going to happen. It's scary the choices that our children are going to have to make in the future. And it's crazy that they even can have to make a choice like that or given a chance to make a decision about their life and ending their life. If you have children at home, as Brad said, this is probably not a show for them. A very touchy topic all around. We're going to watch a couple of videos tonight and probably a 45-minute talk about MAID, medically assisted in dying, if you're wondering what MAID means. Medically assisted in dying, and that's administered by a doctor, a nurse, or a nurse practitioner.
And you've been there. You've sat in with this process, and I almost wanted to say execution, but it's not an execution by any stretch. It's meant to do some positive things for the individual who is going through this, but at the same time, it leaves some pretty broken hearts.
Right. We're going to talk a lot about that and get into detail of when it started and, like I said, where it's gone today. And it's really scary. It really is.
I know. I'm terrified. I'm terrified for my kids' future. I'm terrified for their kids' futures.
And as I sit with families on a daily basis, as a funeral director, whether you like it or not, it's your job to take care of people that use MAID, and MAID for the first part was made for the right reason. And some people will disagree with that too. Some people will say,
stipulations have exceeded from what it was when it first started. Is that what you're saying?
Off the charts. I mean, we started by just taking care of people that are struggling with cancers, with ALS, with diseases that are incurable and no coming back from, and people suffering a pain that you couldn't even imagine. Not even pain medication helps you. That's what MAID was originally brought to us for in 2016 when it became law.
Right.
So we'll talk about where it went from there. But we're going to say hi to some people tonight.
All right, let's do that.
Gord, our first one always on the show.
This is the good part of the night.
Gord gave himself his own trophy here tonight.
Hey, good to see you, Gord. Great to have you.
And then we got Debbie. Good evening from
Tabor, Alberta.
There you go. Dan Ross from Ross, Manitoba.
That's right. Hey, Randy Medwood, good to hear from you, buddy. A long time. Toulon, Manitoba. It's been many years, but good to see you up
Randy,
there,
where
Randy.
you been hiding in the woods in Toulon? Diane, she's replying to somebody. Debbie, hey, Debbie, did you go for all-you-can-eat pasta? It was Debbie that won
It was
right?
Debbie, I think.
Because she was giving it, somebody handed it down to her.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mike, hello, everyone listening from Flying J in Calgary. Wow.
Sitting at the truck stop, working.
So this is a good show to maybe share right now. It's a good topic. It's a topic that exploded on the internet the other day, and a lot of people are really angry about this topic. In general, a lot of people don't even know about it. A lot of people are completely lost.
No, we're going to set
what's
the
going
record
on.
straight a little bit tonight. We're going to basically take away some of the myths and the falsehoods. We're going to bring the truth, which is going to be eye-opening. It's troublesome to think that this can happen in this day and age. Logan's Run was a movie that they shot way back when in the 70s.
Hey, Brad, it's hard hearing you if you people are
Hard hearing me tonight? I'm not sure why. I'm extremely loud, and
because Brad is old.
microphone is in good shape here. All right.
Can you hear him better now? Hopefully you can.
Debbie, maybe turn up the volume. I'm just saying.
Al
Maybe.
Bueller was at my house today working away.
Was he?
And I have a picture. I wanted to post a picture of him. Maybe we will by the end of the show, of him working in a flower bed, and all he can see is his head.
Oh.
That's funny. What's it say here? Was shocked when I saw MAID was being offered to children, especially teenagers.
Well, that's what we're going to talk about tonight, Diane. It's the topic at hand, and that's where these rules, regulations, policies, procedures, stipulations have all developed into something that's taken it to a place of 13 years of age, and it's troublesome.
This week I talked with a few doctors that I know, and I've talked with a couple of nurses.
How's that rash?
And people working in the hospital.
How's that rash?
The rash.
I'm just trying to get a laugh
the
because
rash
right away
is
we're not going to be laughing right away.
It's the doctors I talked to were very sensitive about this topic, and some doctors said that the one doctor I was talking to said that our medical system is failing the people. So instead of providing the proper care they need to provide, they're trying to eliminate people so they don't use the resources and use up the resources. So what they're telling you is, you've worked hard, you've paid taxes all your years, you raised families, now you're elderly, you're sick, so you don't deserve to live, so you should die. Don't use the resources. Don't take that away from the younger people. You don't have a right to be in this world anymore. And, I remember doing our funeral arrangements just a little while ago with a gentleman, and he was broken. So he's struggling with cancer, stage 4 cancer, struggling to deal with his family and his wife and everything that he wanted for his future, but now nothing because he's facing death. And the doctor simply said to him, you probably have 3 months to live at the most. And then 10 minutes later, that same doctor told him that you can make things easier for your family by enrolling in the MAID program. And he was furious, on fire, to the point where he walked right out of his doctor's office and hasn't got back since, came in, made funeral arrangements, and said, well, just in case. And I don't think a doctor has a right to do that to somebody. To take your morale away, to take away your dreams and your hope to live, and to raise your family and to be with your family and grow old together. I think the government these days is playing God, and they're doing it a little too much. Everything from changing the way our weather works to deciding when we die deciding when we can't drive anymore, all the things that they're doing to us, deciding whether we should be vaccinated or non-vaccinated. And that's one of the topics we're going to talk about tonight too. But first, we're going to listen to this video about assisted dying in Canada. So we're going to go to that, come back and say hi to a few people and get deep into the show. Remember, please share, follow, like the show. It's an important one.
Assisted dying, as it is euphemistically called, is often presented as a more compassionate, civilized alternative to human suffering. Why shouldn't unwell people be given help by the authorities to end their lives in a manner of their choosing? This is surely much more humane, or so advocates argue. Well, those still gripped by this delusion should take a look at Justin Trudeau's Canada, where assisted dying has become a gruesome, state-sanctioned industry. There is nothing remotely civilized about Canada's Medical Assistance in Dying, or MAID program. Assisted dying in Canada was initially considered a last resort for terminally ill patients suffering from incurable pain. But in the space of just a few years, euthanasia has been made available to pretty much anyone who is struggling with an illness or disability. People facing homelessness and poverty are feeling compelled to end their lives rather than burden the authorities. Things are about to get even grimmer. In 2027, Canadians will be able to apply for MAID on the grounds that they are suffering from a mental illness. Originally, this change in the law was due to take effect in March this year, but it was postponed at the 11th hour. If this expansion goes ahead, anyone with a serious mental health condition may be eligible for assisted suicide or euthanasia, even if they're not suffering from any physical pain at all. So, in just over a decade, Canada has gone from legalizing assisted dying in certain tight circumstances to offering suicide as an alternative to life's woes. This amounts to a cautionary tale about the cruel disregard for human life that is unleashed when you legitimize assisted suicide. In December 2015, Quebec became the first Canadian province to allow euthanasia for terminally ill patients. Others soon followed. In June 2016, the Canadian Parliament passed legislation that changed the criminal code to allow terminally ill adults to access assisted dying across the country. This created the MAID program, which offers both euthanasia, when a doctor actively ends a patient's life with a lethal injection, and assisted suicide, when a patient is given the drugs to end his or her own life. At the time, MAID was sold to Canadians as a question of autonomy. The right to die was presented as a fundamental human right. In 2015, the Canadian Supreme Court even ruled that denying someone assisted suicide or euthanasia denied equality to the physically disabled.
This is a momentous occasion.
The Canadian public seemed to agree. In 2014, not long before MAID was introduced, 79% of Canadians supported assisted suicide being offered in limited circumstances. But once the law had changed, it didn't take long for those restrictions to loosen. In 2021, 5 years after MAID was first introduced, Canada expanded the eligibility criteria. Those with serious and chronic physical conditions became eligible, even when their illness was not life-threatening. A long-term health condition that made life intolerable was now enough. Applying for MAID became significantly easier. Soon, people began applying for MAID for reasons that had almost nothing to do with health. One of the most infamous cases was that of Amir Farsood.
On the 7th of January 2015,
as it is euphemistically called. In 2015, the Canadian Supreme Court even ruled that denying someone assisted suicide or euthanasia denied equality to the physically disabled.
This is a momentous occasion.
The Canadian public seemed to agree. In 2014, not long before MAID was introduced, 79% of Canadians supported assisted suicide being offered in limited circumstances. But once the law had changed, it didn't take long for those restrictions to loosen. In 2021, 5 years after MAID was first introduced, Canada expanded the eligibility criteria. Those with serious and chronic physical conditions became eligible, even when their illness was not life-threatening. A long-term health condition that made life intolerable was now enough. Applying for MAID became significantly easier. Soon, people began applying for MAID for reasons that had almost nothing to do with health. One of the most infamous cases was that of Amir Farsood, a 54-year-old disabled man who applied for MAID in 2022 because he was about to be made homeless. Farsood was quite open about the fact that he didn't actually want to die. He simply didn't know what else to do. He felt that he was being abandoned by the authorities, and he decided that he would rather be dead than homeless. Homelessness, or fear of it, is not one of the reasons Canadians can apply for MAID, not yet at least. But Farsood could apply on the basis of his chronic back pain. He got as far as receiving one of the 2 doctor's signatures required to proceed. Thankfully, after a public outpouring of support and a wave of donations, he decided that he didn't want to go through with it. Others weren't so lucky. In February 2022, a 51-year-old woman known only by the pseudonym Sophia was euthanized by doctors. She suffered from an extreme sensitivity to household chemicals and cigarette smoke, which made life unbearable for her. Because of her complex needs, the local authorities found it difficult to house her. Sophia spent 2 years asking for help with her living situation, to no avail. Eventually, she decided that MAID was the only solution left. 4 doctors wrote to federal officials on Sophia's behalf, begging them to help her find alternative accommodation, but their pleas fell on deaf ears, and she was killed instead. In a similar case, 61-year-old Donna Duncan was euthanized in 2022, after she was deprived of the treatment she so desperately needed. A car accident left her with a particularly bad concussion, and this led to months of mental and physical decline. She was never seen by her local clinic for complex chronic diseases, thanks to its months-long waiting list. But when she applied for MAID, she was approved within a few days. Her daughters maintained that she did not have the capacity to consent to being euthanized. Stories like these are shockingly common. For many Canadians, accessing MAID is easier and cheaper than getting the treatment or care they need. More and more people are applying for MAID because they cannot afford to go on living, or their families cannot afford to support them. In 2021, almost 36% of MAID patients said that they believed themselves to be a burden on family, friends, or caregivers. The Canadian authorities are all but promoting death as a cheaper, easier alternative to life's struggles. In 2022, an Army veteran called up Veterans Affairs Canada seeking treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder and a brain injury. He was offered MAID instead. Christine Gauthier, a veteran and former Paralympian, asked the authorities if she could have a stair lift installed in her home. Instead, she received a letter asking if she had ever considered euthanasia. Given cases like these, disability rights campaigners have become some of the fiercest opponents of Canada's euthanasia laws. In January last year, more than 50 organisations warned that MAID poses an existential threat to disabled people, devaluing their lives and providing the state with an excuse to forego its responsibilities to them. These groups rightly argue that Canada should be improving its healthcare services for disabled people and helping them to live decent lives, rather than offering them assisted dying as a solution. The same applies to terminally ill patients too. The priority should be ensuring the best quality end-of-life care, rather than ending people's lives sooner than is necessary. In many cases, it is the absence of decent palliative care that is driving so many terminally ill patients to seek euthanasia in the first place. With the MAID programme set to expand to the mentally ill in 2027, we will undoubtedly see a new wave of heartbreaking cases. 47-year-old Lisa Pauly plans to apply for MAID as soon as the law changes, on account of her debilitating anorexia. She has tried everything, she told Reuters recently, and is now too tired to go on. Another mentally ill woman admitted to CTV News that she is terrified of the expansion. She is worried that she will seek out MAID when she next has suicidal thoughts. The grim realities of MAID seem to have given Canadians pause for thought. Public opinion has turned significantly. As of 2023, only 30% of Canadians supported opening up MAID to people with mental health difficulties. Unfortunately, tragedies will continue to occur so long as death care remains more accessible than healthcare. In 2022, MAID was responsible for over 4% of all deaths in Canada. That was up from 3.3% in 2021 and 2.5% in 2020. In Quebec, a shocking 8% of all deaths in 2022 were attributable to the MAID program. As if all this were not horrifying enough, there remains a vocal minority, including high-profile healthcare individuals, that is advocating to expand MAID even further. Children born with severe disabilities and elderly people who are supposedly tired of being alive have been put forward as potential candidates for legalised euthanasia. All of this is well beyond the bounds of what Canadians were originally told MAID would entail. But stories of homeless, poor, disabled and desperate people accessing a state-assisted death are merely the grim, logical consequence of legalising assisted dying in the first place. Assisted dying undermines the value of life, elevating death as the ultimate solution to suffering. Canada is a warning to the world. This is where the right to die leads us. Anyone who values humanity should ensure their own nation doesn't follow down this dark path.
Okay,
Interesting video.
there you go. That's what this is all about. And
We also want you to stick around until the end of the show because we have an interesting video that you're going to want to watch. It's about a win for Canada and the vaccinated. It's a really interesting video that's going to be interesting for you to see and watch. So stay right till the end so you can watch this. So here's what it's all about. The government is now in the death business.
they're taking your job.
The government is in the death business, and it's scary that the government has stepped up. In 2016, just so you know, Bill C-14 for adults with terminal illness, for example, ALS, cancer, etc., was legalized. And that's why MAID was first. Medically assisted in death was there. And there's
That was under Bill C-14, which is
Bill
different than
C-14,
7, right? So
Bill-
there's the difference
two
there.
different
That's-
bills. We're going to go through all the bills.
Yeah, that's where it got changed.
So C-14 is where it started, and that was in 2000.
And that was just for adults, like you said, right?
Yeah, that was just for adults. There was no talk of anyone under the age of 18. There was no talk of mental illness.
I think you said the person had to be in irreversible decline and suffering, right?
Right, so that means there was no coming back. They were facing death, and their only alternative as far as they were concerned.
You can wait and go out in pain, or you can go out respectfully and dignified this way.
Correct.
And that's what the government was trying to accomplish was dignity.
Dignity. And I don't think there's any dignity in this type of death.
Well, not left now. They've changed it all. It started that way, though.
That's right. And you also need two
It's
medical
a good way to fool everybody.
you need to go to two doctors. So you need two medical assessments. That's what's required to be part
Well,
of
it's
the
today. What about tomorrow?
Well, tomorrow that's probably going to
They
change.
love changing the rules, don't
They're
they?
probably not going to need anything there.
They love changing that.
So MAID now has changed to mental health, and they postponed it in when it was supposed to happen to 2027. So we're 2 years away from people with mental health lining up as they did in Toronto when it was time to apply for the mental health program MAID in mental health, and they stopped it because there were so many people lined up and there were so many people arguing and fighting about this, saying it was just wrong. And is it fair if you don't have the funds to live, you die? If you're living in poverty, you don't have the right to live, so you have to choose to die? And this is what it's come down to. People who are on the streets struggling with mental illness, people who are homeless, each one of those people have a story. And I don't think it's right that the government takes away their right to live because they don't have money.
I think it's despicable that the government takes away their tax dollars and spends it in places like Ukraine as an example, instead of giving it back to Canadians or Zimbabwe or anywhere else in the world that we waste our money on.
And it's just
Well,
wrong.
Canadians.
And you're right about that. So they could give money to other countries, but they can't take care of Canadians who pay taxes all their lives, raise families. Most of them who've come here and built Canada with their bare hands to make it a better place for you and I. Not only are they taking away our freedom of speech, our freedom of rights, but now they're taking away our freedom to live, our freedom to go to a hospital and get proper care without being offered the alternative MAID, where we could take your life and you could die. There's challenges that this faces, and there's a debate about it, and the debate is mental illness. It's a huge debate. So how can somebody with mental illness know that they want to die? How can they stand in front of a doctor and say, well, I'm struggling with mental illness and I don't want to live anymore?
You need to talk to a psychiatrist, not a doctor who's going to give you MAID.
So one thing is they're going to need to, talk to psychiatrists, and they're going to have mental suffering there's no coming back from. But how do they know? How do they know people can't be cured from mental health or mental suffering?
Once you start this process, it's a limited time space there. There's like 60 days or something, and then it's taken care of. And that's another thing. How are they getting all this done in 60 days and being able to go to 3 doctors or get confirmation that...
You can't. You know as well as I do, if you want to make an appointment to a doctor, you're waiting 3 weeks to a month to get in to see a doctor. And then by the time they send you to a specialist, it's 6 months from there. This is about human rights versus protection of the vulnerable people.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's scary that human rights doesn't matter anymore, and the vulnerable people.
They've taken them away from us. Would you allow MAID for mental illness as a sole underlying condition, Mike? There has to be more to it than just mental illness, right?
And I think it's just wrong that people can line up who are struggling with mental illness. Now, people are going to argue with us because this is a controversial show.
Well, sure, there's challenges, isn't there, along the way?
There's two different things that have happened here. I mean, there's COVID that's caused a lot of the mental illness, that's caused most of the problems that we're running into in the world, the homeless population that's out there, the people struggling with mental illness, the people who've lost their jobs. I mean, COVID caused a big catastrophe in this world, and now MAID has jumped on top of it and taken advantage of everything that COVID has done. And as you know, the 2030 reset, it's all about the government control and getting rid of people.
Depopulation.
Population. And it's sad because, is it because there's inaccurate care or housing?
Subjective suffering, unpredictable outcomes, irreversible conditions. That's what the government's throwing onto all of us at this point in time.
How about families that are struggling with, individuals that are struggling with disabilities or trauma, or feeling they're being pushed towards MAID because nobody wants to deal with them. Well, you're disabled, you're costing too much money to the system, so you should take part in this MAID program. It's absolutely free.
My cousin's been coerced. And I hope he's watching, because we're going to set it straight tonight. We're going to give him a chance to understand what he could be signing up for, because he's in a tough spot right now, and I hope the Lord takes care of him.
And Brad, the big thing that I've seen is, and I've been a part of many MAID programs where I've been in the room, and let's talk about the impact on families, the impact on children. So I remember a MAID program taking place in a building that I was in, and two funeral directors there, including myself, and the impact of what the one funeral director saw was so powerful that he quit, and he left funeral service in general, never to come back and work in funeral service again after what he witnessed. And the way a MAID program works is they allow the family to come in, and they allow you to sit with the family, with the loved one who's going to pass away, and they allow you to say your goodbyes and share a few stories, and maybe a few giggles and a few laughs and some cries. And then after the family has a chance to do this, they ask the family to leave the room for a brief moment. So the family leaves the room, the doctor, nurse, they come in, and then they give this person a second chance and say, are you sure you want to go through with this? And they sign on the dotted line saying, yes, I've decided to die today, and I want to go through with it. So once they sign, everything is placed where it needs to be placed so they can do the injections. And then the family's brought into the room. And the family witnesses the whole thing. The 3 injections that take place. The first one that basically puts you into a coma, and you just feel good mood, sort of like you're drunk. The second one puts you in a severe coma where you don't know what's going on. You can't feel anything. You're just in a coma. And the third injection shuts off your heart. And that's it. It's done. And I remember being in a room with this funeral director that I'm talking about, and we were friends, and we went to school together, and we took the mortuary course together in the University of Manitoba. And I remember one of the kids falling to the ground and crying uncontrollably. He just saw his dad die in front of his eyes. And it was unbelievable, and it was so emotional in that room. It was so heartbreaking in that room. And I'm a seasoned funeral director. I've been doing this for 25 years when this happened. And it broke my heart to the point where there was no helping anyone. There was no counseling anyone. What they saw was devastating. What they saw was death take place right in a room while they were there talking to dad or grandpa 1 second, and then next second gone. And they don't give you time. They move on, and they ask the family to leave, and the family is broken and they're confused, and the kids don't understand it, and it probably causes mental distress on that child for the rest of their lives to witness what they witnessed. And people say, and we've had this topic many a times, is this murder? Is this allowed in God's eyes? Is it suicide? And how would the doctor feel after leaving that room knowing that he just ended somebody's life?
Is this monetized?
That he just ended somebody's life, just like that, in a fast second. And then he feels the emotion and the heartbreak from the family, the wife, the children, the grandchildren. It's heartbreaking when you are actually in a room, and Brad, if you were there, it would probably break you. It would break you because you have to put yourself in that position. And as a funeral director, I put myself in that position a lot, where you're the person that's dying, and you see the trauma all around you and the pain, and the person who's dying sees this too, because the people in the room know that this is the last thing that you're going to say to your loved one. There's no coming back. There's no turning around. And then a couple of minutes later, it's all over, and you walk out of that room 100% confused. Does it affect families? Does your decision affect your family? 100% it does. Is your decision, do you have the right to take your life? Is it your choice? Yes. It's 100% your choice. And Brad and I can't say either way that it's good or bad. It's your choice. It was our choice to get vaccinated or non-vaccinated.
That's what freedom is, right?
It's freedom. Freedom of speech, freedom of choice. So the people that decide to do that. And we could talk about another part of all this, other than the trauma and the guilt.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about the extortion, the coercion, the intimidation, the bullying. Once these individuals express themselves, whether it's to their local doctor or to a therapist, they are starting to push those individuals towards that. So
absolutely,
let's not forget that these individuals who we're going to have receive help aren't actually providing help. They're providing they might think it's help, but it's the worst kind of care you're going to get.
And the doctor I talked to this week said the same thing to me. He said, the medical system is broken. It's broken to the point where people are broken. And you got to put yourself in a position here, Brad. You have ALS, you have stage 4 cancer, you're suffering beyond any point of
I get all that.
So the thing is, with that, you can see a lot of people's points where they say, and that was the reason they brought this in 2016 for that.
Yeah.
They didn't bring it in for people struggling with mental illness, because mental illness can't be fixed. And it's been proven to be fixed. And there's been people that have been in lines at food banks, and people pull up and they change that person's life by giving them a job and giving them shelter and giving them a second chance to life.
Mm-hmm.
And mental health can be fixed with medication sometimes. It can be fixed with support. But are we jeopardizing the support that we're supposed to give people that are sick? And in return, giving them MAID because it's cheaper, it's less expensive, and we don't have to worry about them anymore? And a lot of people say, well, I can take my dog into a vet and get him euthanized because the dog is suffering, so why can't I take my mom or dad? Well, I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that as a funeral director when somebody's struggling to the point, and I've had conversations with people before the MAID program, sharing their stories about how they can't breathe and how they can't sleep and how they're on pins and needles every day and how they have no life and how they have no future and how they feel they're emotionally draining their families because they can't be a part of their lives. So that part I can understand and I can be sympathetic with it. And people say, well, is it okay in God's eyes? Well, I could tell you that we're not the judges to judge people on Judgment Day. There's only one person that's going to do that. And it's not for us to say, well, God is going to be mad at you. And God doesn't allow this. And it's a big topic when you talk about God, religion, and when you talk about death. And a lot of churches in the city of Winnipeg won't allow you to be in a church if you were part of the MAID program because they consider it suicide. So it's a very, very touchy topic, and it's your opinion that matters. You can share your opinion on the comment section.
So let's talk about that for just a second. Angela has something to say. She says, my daughter had just moved into her new house, and her neighbor was having a gathering in their backyard. He invited all of his friends and relatives over. They all ate and drank, and they sat and said their goodbyes. And then as the sun went down, he was given the injection, and shortly after, he died. He had ALS too. So, that to me is something that makes complete sense. But you were about to take this talk into a whole nother level. And when we get to there, that's where that's where that line we were talking about earlier, I was talking about earlier, is drawn in the sand. And when you cross that line, that's where men have to stand up and say enough is enough. And I think we're going to get to that when you decide to bring that up. And again, this is about straining relationships. This is about generations with extended families. This is about a whole bunch of things, but really it comes down to MAID and children, Mike. That's where it's going.
And this is where the topic gets tough. We have children, we have grandchildren, and in the future, Bill C-7 is going to allow your child, they're going to start with children that are sick, children that are suffering in the hospitals, where they're going to give that child the choice whether they want to live or die, go through the MAID program. And what drives me crazy about all this is people that say this is a conspiracy theory, just like they said about COVID, just like they said about other things. And we stood our ground. I stood my ground during COVID from day one. I was public about it.
Yeah, me too.
I spoke at rallies. I almost got arrested after sending a message out to Pallister after it got thousands and thousands of views on the internet where the police came down to the funeral home and said I was threatening the premier. I've been standing up, and I've also been talking about MAID for 2 or 3 years now, and nobody seems to care. But when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And now the going is getting tough because now they're talking about our kids.
Yeah.
It's no different than when we were involved in the lockdowns, and they seized bank accounts, and they arrested people for standing up for freedoms, for freedom of speech and freedom of choice. They arrested you for that. Think about how far the world has gone and how dangerous the world has become. And Brad and I talked about this the other day, where we started with no rules way back when we were young, and life was great. And nobody's going to experience the freedom that we had when we were young. If you're our age, Brad's much older than me, but if you're our age, you experience the freedom of not wearing a seatbelt, not wearing a helmet, not being able to staying out at night and playing.
Staying out till midnight. That's right.
Doing the things that we did.
Take a walk in your neighborhood, anywhere in the city.
And there was justice. And if you committed a crime, there was consequences. And all that has gone out the window. The Trudeau government has completely destroyed Canada, and now is
worst part is it only took 12 years to do that. Unbelievable.
But don't forget, before the 12 years of that, we had, Justin Trudeau's father, who destroyed Canada back then, and people thought he was doing such a great job. And how people elected this government back in again is mind-boggling to me, beyond belief.
Yeah.
And now we're dealing with part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5 of what's yet to come.
Yeah, wait to see what comes.
And Carney is completely out of control. He's constantly lying. If you do research on what he says, nothing he says is the truth. And Wab Kinew, who I thought was a pretty cool guy, by doing some of the things that he did, for him not to stand up for children, especially coming from the background that he comes from, you figure that he would have a different view on children and the death of a child. Leave our kids alone. Leave our kids alone. I had that where people sang that at rallies many times. Leave our kids alone. And this goes for now. Leave our kids alone. You have no business talking to our kids about death in school. You have no business talking to our kids about death in the hospital. You have no business talking to our kids at all. That's why we are parents.
You know who has the right to talk to kids in school? This guy. This guy right here, and the only reason is because he lives it, eats it, and breathes it every single day, and he's the one who's got the proper message, not the teacher. Stop letting the teachers thinking they know everything.
And if your teachers are talking to your kids about Bill C-7, and eventually what it's going to become is a 13-year-old will be able, no different than COVID, where a 13-year-old was able to walk into the office and get the shot without parents' permission.
Or say I'm a girl.
Or say you're a girl, or a boy, or a dog, or a cat, and all these things that are happening. And I respect Trump for finally standing up and saying, listen.
Everything's stopped.
Female.
Right now.
This week he said that we're bringing back the Lord's Prayer into schools. We're bringing back Christianity back into schools.
That other flag goes out the window.
But it's about time people, stood up for what's right. And I'm telling you right now, because we do this all the time. We talk about it, we argue about it, we fight about it. You leave all these comments, and then nobody does anything about it. They just go back until it happens to your family. No different than my brother Kyriakis being murdered. It's a big thing when it happens.
Thanks for the comment, Barb.
But then a year later, nobody cares. When we had rallies about, the catch and release system and the bail system that's going on, nobody cares. It's a hot topic, but nobody wants to do anything about it.
100%. Technology leads these kids to find out things on the internet now about MAID and about other things that are going on in the world. And listen, our kids are scared enough. There's been a lot that's tragically hit them in the last 5 years that they're struggling with, no different than we adults are. You can be 60, you can be 30, you can be 15, and it's all coming at us very quickly and very hard. We need God back in the schools. I couldn't agree more. We need teachers.
We need God back in our hearts and our souls.
We need teachers to start teaching the right things again. Let's get back to the things that are important to our children, which is reading, writing, and arithmetic. You know, John McMorran says, "Who needs teachers? We have AI." John, I'd hate to say this to you, but you know, AI isn't going to be the future that everybody thinks it is. There's a control factor there that I think we'll end up doing a show on at some point too. You do get addicted.
You get addicted.
AI
You think that we got to stop making the government our gods.
We got to stop making.
We
got to stop letting other people talk to our kids. Parents need to start communicating again and doing the things that some of us have stopped.
Family values back.
That's correct.
Family values and family morals back to the table. And
well, how about just sitting down at the dinner table again?
Yeah, how about just sitting down, having dinner with your family, putting your phones away, and just having a conversation about life. And hey, how was your day today? And you know, what are you doing tomorrow? And how's work?
Do you do that every week?
Josh and I and Sharon talk all the time.
But do you do that every week? Do you sit down and have dinner? That's an important part,
right? We sit down,
right?
we talk, we have dinner. Sharon constantly is cooking, and we eat at home, and we have the love a family needs. You know, it's important to show your kids love. You know, and this is part of the problem. Our kids are being drained by the system, and they're not able to think anymore because it's so confusing out there to be a child right now. And Brad talked about this at the beginning of the show. You know, you get home away from school, now you're being bullied on the computer. You're being bullied in school. You're being bullied on the streets. It's terrible what's happening, and we need to protect our kids. We need to show our kids love. We need, you know, yesterday, Josh played hockey, and it was a late game, and he plays kind of a beer league. So out of nowhere, I said to him, "Hey, Josh, can I come with you to watch your hockey game?
Yeah.
You want to come with me to watch my game, Dad?" Yeah, that's what we need to do with our kids. Yeah. And then the conversation on the way to the rink. You know, it just opens up doors to conversation where you could talk and you can share things and you can try to educate your kid on what's going on in the world and what he should and shouldn't do. It's important that we spend time with our kids. You know, the expansion of this is right now it's 18 and older.
That's right. So it's illegal for anybody under 18.
Under anyone under the age of 18 can't be a part of the MAID program as of right now. But now, Bill C7 is going to change all that.
It's going to mention related content, now mentioning future eligibility for youth. That's under 18 and starts at what, 13?
But the debate here is, can minors fully understand the consent to MAID? Can a minor really,
no?
Just because a minor broke up with his, you know, a minor broke up with his girlfriend. Let's just say a 15-year-old broke up with his girlfriend.
Right.
And you know at 15, when you break up with your girlfriend, it's the end of the world. You're not going to get another girlfriend. Life is over.
Yeah, he shows up to school and makes a comment, and the next thing you know.
So, you know, the thing is, kids are vulnerable. And
they go through a wide range of emotions at that age.
And at 15, you're still growing. And I watched this comedian, Ken Lee sent me a video about this comedian that I wanted to play today. And this kid, you know, at 14 was growing and, you know, looking like a 14-year-old. I was playing basketball and, you know, saying all kinds of crazy things. And at one point he said to his dad, I have a small penis, Dad. Can I cut it off? And it's like, his dad looked at him. But it just shows you the emotions these kids go through. And, you know, they're told that they can be transgender. They're told that they can...
There's a lot of confusion.
There's a lot of confusion. So when you bring up MAID, there's even more confusion. Because a kid thinks, well, I'm in a dark spot in life. And I've talked to many kids. They're in a very, very dark hole. And they can't see the light. And they get depressed. And evil takes over their souls. And all they hear or see is evil. You know, we've all done it where you have the angel on one side and the devil on the other side, and the devil saying, do this. And the angel saying, no, Tommy, don't do that. You know, and then you're in this deep hole, and, you know, all you can see in this deep hole is darkness. And if you don't have anybody talking to you, and if you don't have anybody guiding you, anybody protecting you, anyone willing to pull you out of that hole and bring you out and show you the light, you're lost.
That's right.
So now, you know, you're in that deep hole, you're going through depression, your mind is weak, and then somebody gets a hold of your kid and says, hey, you know, there's a solution to this. You could just end your life under MAID. All you have to do is go into the office, fill out the application, and, you know, 60 days later, you're gone. You know, you can go visit your dad who passed away or your mom or whatever. All these things are going to say to our kids, it's a mess. And a lot of kids are struggling with mental illness right now. And that's a fact. And I've talked to a doctor about this. What do you give a kid when he comes into your office? I say to the doctor, guess what he says to me? I give the kids antidepressants. And I go, why would you give kids antidepressants when you can? Why aren't we giving kids help? Why aren't we bringing them to a place where we can get these kids right?
How about start with a hug?
Antidepressants are the answer, and it is evil just to put a person on antidepressants that's hard to get off of after. And it's the feel-good drug. You know?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, here, I'll give you this so you can feel good. But the minute you go off that antidepressant, you know, you get all confused and things happen. MAID is wrong. It's wrong in every aspect other than the aspect that they first started with it. And again, I say leave our kids alone, because this debate is a strong debate. And if you have kids or grandkids, be prepared to protect these children. It's coming. It's coming to a neighborhood near you. Just like more and more things are going to come our way from the government that we're not expecting.
And this isn't about terminal illness. This isn't about just anything like that. This is about just a kid saying some stuff and a guidance counselor saying at school, I heard him say that, and we're going to get him the help that he needs, and the help is assisted suicide.
And you know, concerns about normalizing suicide and influence vulnerable youth to MAID, that's a real concern to me. And like I say, our kids are weak, our children are weak, and not all, but we need ethical and legal safeguards in place.
That's right.
To protect our children. If we don't have
an investment
in our future, which is our children,
our children's mental health,
we're in trouble.
Prevention strategies, I think you said, right?
And how about mental conditions? Why don't we get places when somebody's struggling with mental illness, so many empty buildings in Winnipeg, so many places that we could put people to get them the proper help that they need. Instead of doing a catch and release, it's another catch and release.
Whether it's mental health, whether it's drug addiction, whether it's just...
The problem is, it seems like nobody cares. It seems like we elect all these politicians to do all the wrong things. Oh, let's open up Portage and Main and let everyone suffer and see what's going around everywhere. Let's get an ex-pastor to make the wrong decision. Instead of helping people and doing God's work in this world, we do the opposite.
You know what? Gymnasium. We tried this before we sat down tonight. I said, let's come up with a new acronym for MAID. Gymnasium actually did that.
Oh, did he?
He did. Mental and intellectual disorder.
And that's perfect.
That's perfect.
We were just playing around with that earlier.
We tried. Manitoba. I don't know. At the end of it had Wabcanoe.
I think it's important to have oversight and regulation in place. We need regulations in place, systems and procedures that our kids just can't walk in without parents' permission and take their lives.
How much does this come down to our premier?
I think our premier listen, the mayor and premiers play a big role in what happens in our provinces and in our cities. And if we don't elect the proper premiers, if we don't elect the proper mayors,
they're dictating policy and procedure.
Yeah. And why are they doing that? Why don't we have mayors in places that are standing up for our children, our citizens, our elderly, and saying no?
Is that a question for me? Because I'd love to answer that one, but I'm not going to.
It's time to get people in place that really care about you and your families and your mom and dad that have worked so hard and are afraid to walk on their streets at night. In the summertime, the crime is going to get even crazier.
Manitobans that have done it right, period. And there's a lot of them that have done it right.
And there's tension between protecting the vulnerable and respecting human anatomy. There's public trust. How about public trust? And the legal system that we need to maintain throughout this whole thing.
What about societal responsibility now?
And what is our responsibility as a society when it comes to them taking our kids? Do you want to be standing at my funeral home or another funeral home, burying your child or cremating your child that took their life because we just didn't care enough to stand up and make a difference? It's time for us to put things aside put family first. I'm telling you this from my heart. I see it every day as a funeral director. It's heartbreaking when you lose a mom or a dad or a child to a tragedy. The children that we lose to drug overdoses or suicides is a tragedy. But it's even more of a tragedy when there was nothing wrong with your child other than mental illness maybe that we could fix, and they walk into a room and a doctor or a nurse takes their life. just like that.
Brenda Linoff had a good comment here on chat just now. She says thousands of remote practitioners are willing to help these kids. You don't have to look within Canada where these individuals are pushing the MAID program. There are others out there that you can reach out to from around North America and around the world who will also give you the straight and skinny on this all, and they'll basically get your kid the help that they need as well. There's a lot of online courses and classes, and there's a lot of teaching that's going on still, even though you're supposedly high school, junior high school is supposed to do that. They've dropped the ball there, and we know that.
We need to improve access to palliative care and mental health mental health support. There's no doubt about that. And if we could get the help out there, if the mayors and the premiers would spend the money where it needs to be spent, sure, we need to fix our infrastructure. But what a waste of money. Portage-Germain, for me, is mind-boggling that they did that when there's so many people struggling in our streets. And you know, when you have mental illness, you have poverty, you have people living on our streets, you have people that are starving, that are hungry, and then what that causes is crime, break and enters, violence. The circle just keeps going round and round, and nobody's stopping the circle from being a circle. You know, somebody could stop that. Our mayors, our premiers can step in and say, okay, enough. It's time to fix this problem, not push it aside. Drugs are a real problem in the city.
It is.
You know, and drugs are another move to mental health. Mm-hmm. You know, it's all related in one. And again, we sit back and we let it happen, and we're seeing places like Vancouver turning into war zones. And now that they're going to bring a safe, not so safe consumption site to Manitoba, Manitoba's going to turn into a bigger war zone that we already have.
Yeah, it's not good. I've seen it firsthand. It's not good. It's the worst thing that you can do to Winnipeg, period.
And this is a big topic. We have to ensure that people are choosing MAID for the right reasons, not because they feel abandoned.
That's right. Make sure that there's no abandonment or they feel burdensome.
And we need to talk to them about the value of life. It must be affirmed. Mm-hmm. And we need to invest in our children and our grandchildren. And you and I, we need to invest in ourselves. Because if we don't invest in ourselves, a lot of these kids don't see a future.
That's right.
And we need to encourage discussions, informed discussions that are ethical and inclusive about death and dying and what death really is. And trust me, I've had this topic with kids. And I've talked people out of suicides. And I've brought people to the funeral home and counseled them. And sometimes all these kids need...
And you've gone to the schools and talked to them in the schools just to let them know that you have a choice. You have choices. There's not just one option.
If you knew some of the things that I did to educate our youth, to show our youth that people do love them, that people do care about them, that they do have meaning in this world, and they belong here. You know, sometimes you just need to talk to these kids because they feel like they're lost. They feel like they're in a world all on their own. And we need to support each other. It all starts at home. Mm-hmm. Starts at home about talk. You know, they're increasing our taxes in the city. They're increasing our water bills by 55%.
$1,000 a lot of people's went up by.
And yet, what are they doing with this money? Because they're definitely not doing nothing for you and I. You know, why are the elderly...
Going to rebuild the bridge on Bishop Grand.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Because that by Pembina there, because that's needed.
So, you know what? I mean, we have to encourage compassion for those that are suffering. There's no doubt about that. There's people that are suffering, and we need to be compassionate towards their suffering.
So really, we're into final thoughts here about this. So summarizing key issues, you know, terminal MAID versus mental health and youth. You know, you encourage compassion, reinforce the need for safe, thoughtful, and well-funded alternatives. You know, let's talk about some of the numbers, Mike, because the numbers are staggering where we're at, aren't they?
The numbers are actually bizarre. So I could tell you... the demographics, first of all, the average MAID recipient is between the ages is between the ages of 76 and 78. So that's correct. Those are people that are lived their lives.
Only because it's not 18 and under yet.
Right. Only. So that's just right now. But there's notable trends that, you know, that's what they do. But I'm going to tell you something. In 2016, these are only reported 1,018 people were reported to take their lives for MAID.
Committed MAID, yeah.
2017, 2,838 people. 2018, 4,493 people. So you can see the numbers climbing. And this is without people under the age 18 or them touching our children. In 2019, 5,665 people. 2020, 7,595 people
7,600 people, basically.
took their lives
Yeah.
to MAID. So 2021, get this,
3.3% of all deaths in Canada? Wow.
10,064 people took their lives through MAID. So look what MAID has done since 2016 till now. So we've jumped up to a death rate of 10,664 people. 2022, 13,241 people took their lives to MAID. 2023, so we're getting closer to home right now. 2023, 4.7% of the population's deaths, 15,343 people took their lives to MAID. Add up all these numbers, it's bizarre. It's
No.
60,000 since 2016 to 2023. We're not counting 2024 yet. 60,301 people in Canada took their lives to MAID.
I'm going to make this really dramatic.
60,000.
I'm going to make this really dramatic.
Please do.
One of those was your kid.
What of those were your mom or dad? You know, and that's why we need more love in this world. Honestly, I tell you this from my heart. Spend time with your kids. Bring family values back to the table. Bring family morals back to the table.
Spend time with your spouse.
Spend time with your
Treat
spouse.
each
Love
other
your
better.
spouse. You know, don't think you're better than one another. And it's funny because every time I do a show like this and I do something wrong, I go home and Sharon says, "Well, you said on your show."
You be nice.
So, you know, this is where we're at. This is where we're going. But we want you to watch this next video before you go anywhere.
Are you ready to do that?
It's a win-win for
You
Canadians.
got to
We're
give me
almost
just you got to
pushing
give me just a
10
second to
o'clock.
get this ready. You're going to have to talk a little bit
Oh,
more
okay,
first for a
okay.
second. You're throwing it at me here,
So
buddy.
you know what? We thank you for watching the show tonight while we're just getting ready to wind down on this final video. But you need to stay and watch this video. Please like, share, follow the show. Somebody needs to hear this tonight. Somebody needs to hear this message.
This is the
Somebody
good
needs-
news, right?
Somebody needs to talk to their kids. This is the good news about it all. So we're going to finish on a good note.
Well, yeah, that was our goal all the way along, was to finish with something happy, and that's exactly what's going to come out of this. So, folks, please take care of each other, as Mike says.
And I encourage discussions with family and friends. Very important topic to discuss. Not only the MAID program, but death in general, family in general, love in general. But just be kind to each other. It takes zero to be kind to each other. No money.
100%.
And sometimes the happiest people I see, believe it or not, are people on social assistance that have nothing. But they have each other. They have each other, and that's what makes them happy, is the simple things in life. We'll be back right after this video.
So it turns out the federal government that told you to follow the science forgot to follow the Constitution. In a blistering ruling first reported by Blacklock's reporter, a federal labor board has confirmed what many of us already knew, that vaccine mandates weren't just tyrannical, they were unconstitutional. The National Research Council, a federal agency, has been found to have violated the charter rights of its own employees, specifically their freedom of religion, by denying them exemptions from Trudeau's COVID jab decree. You remember those mandates, right? The ones that forced millions of Canadians to choose between their beliefs and their paychecks? Well, now, thanks to some brave souls and a labor adjudicator with a backbone, the truth is finally being dragged into the light. The ruling focuses on two Christian employees, one a Catholic meteorologist, and the other one a Pentecostal IT analyst, both suspended without pay because they refused a COVID shot developed using fetal cell lines from aborted babies. Let that sink in for a second. These people aren't radical anti-vaxxers. They aren't tinfoil hat types. One was even a scientist. They were people of faith who, in their own words, said they would rather die than comply with what they saw as a betrayal of their deepest religious convictions. The one woman, a practicing Catholic, explained that her beliefs compelled her to avoid any cooperation, direct or indirect, with abortion. For us Catholics, it's called being complicit in sin. When she explained that to her supervisor, she was punished, not accommodated, not respected, but punished. The Pentecostal man said he hadn't had any vaccines in over 20 years, trusting God to protect him. He also pointed out that using fetal cell lines, even decades removed, was a violation of God's command against killing, and for that, suspended without pay. Now here's the kicker. This is the same Liberal government that pretends you can be a devout Catholic, like the current and former prime ministers, while cheering on child gender transitions, forcing people to wave pride flags, and chanting for abortion rights. And this is the same government that had the gall to sit in judgment of real Christians, questioning the sincerity and orthodoxy of their beliefs. What an absolute joke.
If you don't want to get vaccinated, that's your choice. But don't think you can get on a plane or a train beside vaccinated people.
This is the same Liberal government that tried to strip charitable status from religious organizations that oppose abortion, barred churches and Christian camps from the summer jobs grant program unless they swore allegiance to the Liberals' radical sex ed agenda, and still insists that the state, not scripture, gets to define what counts as real religious belief. These are the people who scoff at Christian moral teachings in public, then pretend to be qualified to measure your theological consistency in private HR meetings. And now they're getting a long overdue spanking in court. The Public Sector Labor Relations and Employment Board sided with the employees, citing the Supreme Court's Amselem decision, the one that says religious beliefs don't have to be popular, consistent, or approved by Justin Trudeau or Mark Carney to be protected under the Charter. And the numbers don't lie. Of more than 2,000 federal employees who requested a religious exemption during the mandates, only 26% were approved. The other 3/4 were tossed aside like the rights they were supposedly guaranteed under the Charter. This was not about public health. It was about ideological submission. Obey or be cast out. Bow to the new state religion or lose your livelihood. But now the tide is turning. This ruling won't undo the pain, the humiliation, or the lost income these Canadians suffered. But it's a start, and it's a warning shot. And it's proof that, try as they might, the Liberals can't fully erase our constitutional rights with a smug press release and a pride flag. You want reconciliation? You want justice? Start with an apology, and then, feds, start writing the checks. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid.
Well, there you have it, Mike.
A win-win. Good way to finish the show.
That is a good way to finish a show. It's a great way to finish COVID, maybe. If if we could make that go away, that'd be a help.
Conspiracy theory, eh? That's what you believe in, huh?
Oh, yeah.
You just
tinfoil hat wear.
God bless you and your families. Take care of yourselves and each other. Thank you for watching another edition of Ask the Funeral Director.
Good night, everybody. Take care.